The Recovery Act is not a single silver bullet. I think of it as silver buckshot as opposed to a single bullet.
The vice president may think of the stimulus money as buckshot, but it hasn't stopped the nation from hitting its highest unemployment rate in 26 years.
And you thought the days of vice presidential buckshot ended with Dick Cheney. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABCNews.com's Top Line. I'm David Chalian here in Washington, D.C.
And I'm Rick Klein in New York.
Each weekday, we're bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, analysis, insight, everything you need and want to know about the world of politics.
And you can be part of that conversation all day long. It's twitter.com/the note. Let us know what you think.
My Empire State colleague, Rick Klein, kick us off. What's your top line today?
All right. Job Watch, 216,000 lost jobs last month. That is less than some analysts thought, and it's a slowing of the job losses, but the unemployment rate is ticking up again, and we're getting close to 10%. It's at 9.7%. The vice president tried to get in front of this story yesterday by talking about the impact of the stimulus, but clearly, David, it's hard to talk about how the stimulus is working when we're now talking about minus 3 million jobs under the Obama administration.
It's very hard to absorb that message from the White House, indeed, and of course, Republicans now seizing on these jobs numbers, Rick, to say now is not the time for the president's health care plan. We'll get into that with a White House advisor in just a moment. Sorry about that. The president's pollster. That's our second headline. Joel Benenson, the president's chief pollster, has sent a memo up to Capitol Hill Democrats about the health care plan. This is in advance of the president's big speech. This is the president's team trying to buck up Democrats on Capitol Hill, saying that as soon as the country understands specifics, his numbers show that the support for the health care reform will skyrocket.
A rosy reading of the polls, to say the least, but it does give them a little bit of a pep talk as they head into next week, a critical week in the health care reform debate as Congress comes back and the president gets ready for his joint session. Lessons learned. You thought that health care speech was going to be controversial. How about the education speech that President Obama is planning on Tuesday? Some preparatory materials that the White House released around that has a lot of parents and some school districts up in arms. The White House having to amend some of these to make sure that it doesn't sound like it's going to be a propaganda session as much as possible. They're not asking people quite to help the president just as much. But, David, this seems to have caught the White House totally off guard.
Well, I have some sympathy for them, I guess. I mean, perhaps they should have expected the controversy. They clearly changed that language that you're talking about. But this seems like one of those faux controversies that it kind of befuddles me how much that sort of echo chamber can really dominate some headlines. But you're right. They no doubt had to respond to this in a way that they weren't expecting. And forecasting a wave. That's right. One of the best political forecasters in the business, Charlie Cook, has a column out today looking at the peril for Democrats in 2010. And Rick, he says this is not just danger about the president's poll numbers today or danger about health care reform not polling very well right now. He says that the Democratic Party is really starting to lose independence, which is one of these key components he looks at going into the election year.
And this is the kind of forecast that will launch 1,000 newspaper stories about whether Democrats have something to worry about. It is so early, though, David, to be worried about it.
It is indeed. A year from now, we'll be talking about sort of the home stretch into the midterm elections. That's a long way off. We're going to turn now to Austan GOOLSBEE, a senior economic advisor on the Council of Economic Advisors to President Obama. He joins us from the North Lawn of the White House. Mr. GOOLSBEE, thank you for being here. Let's begin with these jobs numbers we have today. I know that 216,000 jobs lost is less bad than we've seen. I understand that. But this uptick to 9.7%, the highest unemployment rate we've seen in 26 years, this is going in the wrong direction, is it not, sir?
Well, we're going in the right direction in the sense that the job losses have been getting smaller and smaller each month. When the president took over, we were losing 740,000 jobs a month, and now it's down to 216,000. Everyone knew, we internally, the president has been saying, the private forecasters have been saying that the unemployment rate would end up peaking out at something over 10%. So I don't think there was any surprise in that. I think the market clearly took the main surprise from this being job losses were significantly smaller than what had been anticipated by some 30,000, 40,000.
But as you know, early in the year, when the stimulus first was being discussed, it was forecast as something that would hold unemployment at around 8%. We're now well north of that, and yet the vice president yesterday saying that the Stimulus Act is doing more, and it's doing it more quickly than ever anticipated. How does that jive with the fact that we are still losing jobs, 500,000 now over the last 2 months?
Well, now hold on. You got two things in there, and on the first, I think it's a little misleading to everybody, us and the private forecasters who make a living by forecasting, underestimated how serious the baseline recession was going to be. There's not any question now in anyone's mind that this was the most serious recession since 1929 and that we were teetering on the edge of a depression. So the baseline was substantially worse than anyone predicted. But the impact of the stimulus on keeping the unemployment rate from going even higher, everyone sensible is in agreement that it has been able to do so. And the vice president's speech laid out a lot of specifics, both the private forecasters who say that it added 2 to 3% to the GDP in the last quarter, laying out specific examples of projects where they came in under budget and they were able to do more than they anticipated. So I think you're kind of conflating two different things there.
Austin, speaking of specifics, do you have a sense of how many jobs the stimulus bill has created?
Well, the CEA is going to be releasing a report to Congress on September 10th that's going to outline our best estimates of how many jobs have been saved or created. So I'll refer you to that.
Austin, I want to ask you a question about the deficit. Obviously, there's been a lot made of the ballooning deficit and the record numbers that we're hitting. But the stimulus bill has some significant spending in these out years that will contribute to the deficit. Are you concerned at all about how that fits in, that you're going to be continuing to spend these additional dollars several years from now at the same time you're trying to control the deficit?
Well, I think that part is quite modest. When you get past the 2 to 3 year time frame of the initial impact of the stimulus, the impact on the deficit is very modest, and the impact in the short run, in the middle of the deepest recession since 1929, that is not the moment that you want to tighten the belt. That's exactly what Herbert Hoover did and created the Depression. When you see the people criticizing the stimulus, criticizing it on really contradictory grounds, it's running up the deficit, it's not having an impact on jobs, one gets the sense it's kind of the congressional version of the East German judge. They had their critiques written out before they even saw what was in the stimulus. And so I think we ought to turn to the people who make a living doing forecasts and evaluating the economy, and those people are saying that it's having a big positive impact.
Before we let you go, Mr. Goolsbee, I just want to turn your attention to health care for a moment, because the economy, of course, has an impact on that. John Boehner and a lot of the Republicans up on Capitol Hill are saying that this jobs report is a clear sign of why you guys need to scale back what Boehner calls your jobs-killing health care reform plan. Do you expect the health care reform plan that President Obama puts through and signs eventually to lose jobs, that it will be a net job loss?
No, absolutely not. The CEA released a report on small business, for example, which showed the ways in which this would be a great benefit to small business, which, as you probably know, healthcare costs are killing small business and they're preventing them from being able to recover. And there are a number of things in the president's plan that would be a great boon to the job creation on that front. And this Representative Boehner's statements are exactly what I'm talking about. They'll take anything to go out and say, well, we're against the health plan, we're against the stimulus, we're against anything just because the president is for it. I think if you look at this jobs report, we need to do more. 9.7% unemployment is not acceptable. But let's remember that for more than a half year until the president took office and they passed the stimulus, the number of jobs lost increased by many thousands every month, peaking when the president took over with a job loss of 740,000 in a single month. We've now gotten that down to 216,000. We need to keep getting that into the positive range, and pulling back on stimulus at this moment is the absolutely wrong thing to do, and abandoning the health plan is the absolutely wrong thing to do.
Austan Goolsbee, a member of the President's Council on Economic Advisors, thank you for joining us from the North Lawn of the White House today.
My
We appreciate
pleasure.
it.